Eric Muathe, Muathe.com, with the World Market Weekend Analysis for the weekend of April 23rd and April 24th, 2016. Let's take a look at markets here. We begin by taking a look at Asia, which was pretty much mixed as of Friday's trade. Biggest mover being Japan, and the rest of the markets were pretty much unchanged or slightly down as far as Asia is concerned. Take a look at European markets, which I believe were down slightly on Friday. The FTSE was down 1%, the DAX 0.6% down, and the French CAC 40 was down 0.29. Take a look at the Americas as of right now, and two markets of interest which we'll cover in this video is here. We are seeing gold down about, not gold, but the Brazilian market down 1.4. Canadian market is unchanged for the day, and I am recording this with about 3 hours to close in the US, and US markets are slightly unchanged to down. The biggest mover being here, which is the Nasdaq, down right now 1.3. We see that crude oil is up 1.7 and gold is down about a percentage point. So let's go straight to the charts. We begin by taking a look at the Australian market, which as of right now, based on the trade of Friday, remember the Australian market was slightly down on Friday, but net we are above this line, which was a problem in the months gone by, especially when we came here. We touched, so at the highs of March, the market did come back and hit that line here, and we stalled, but now we are above that. That's very good action. And as long as the market can hold above the recent weekly closing high, so here the idea is if the market is to move higher, it needs to hold above 5239.30, which is the recent weekly closing high. So we can give it the benefit of the doubt as long as it is holding above that number. Otherwise, if it does move below that, then that's going to be indication of loss of momentum. So for now, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Keep in mind, we also have the possibility of a crossover between the 13-week moving average and the 34-week moving average. So we have the potential for crossover here, which can be bullish. The last time we had a crossover that was bearish was here, and of course the markets went down. We had a previous crossover that was bullish, and of course the market went up. So right now we are looking at the possibility of a crossover. If it happens, there is a chance that this market eventually does see higher prices. Now that's the bullish argument. Let's take a look at the bearish argument on the weekly, and it's a simple line that the market is coming and trying to move above. That line goes back to the lows here. So it's a simple line that I drew in the past couple of weeks here. The reason why I drew this line, it was support, but once we broke through here last year, about, let's call it about July, August, of course the market has never been back to those levels. Every time since then, the market has hit that red line, we have stalled. We hit the red line there, we stalled. We hit the red line here recently, we stalled. Now we are back to this red line. I think it would very easily become another stall point. So even though if you look at price, it looks like the price is breaking out, the RSI does not seem to confirm that breakout. And probably if we have another down week here confirming resistance on the red line, then one can expect a move lower as far as the Australian market is concerned. If we take a look at China, we go back to this recent break as we began 2016. Markets broke through that, and so that was a break there. We've come back over the last couple of weeks. We tried to move above the red line and stalled. So one can still expect this market to struggle as long as it is below this line. Also, we are coming back on the RSI on the weekly. This was the break point in the RSI there. We can draw a line from there, and as of right now, the level we've been talking about the last couple of weeks as potential resistance, seems like the market is showing respect of that red line, and also rejection at RSI 50 on the weekly. So net here, the interpretation is that this is a market that should continue to struggle until it can clear those two lines. Either move above this red line on the price or move above the red line on the RSI. So right now, net looks like a bearish market in my opinion. If we take a look at another weekly chart, this time we're taking a look at Japan. After a nice gain for the week, we can see that we are still coming back net to test this top side. Keep in mind that because of Friday's good move, the RSI did close above 50, suggesting that is one technical reason why we had a nice gain for the week. But because we've already seen the gain for the week, in the coming week, if we show rejection on the blue line and if we move below RSI 50, expect a strong reversal lower if the market is to move back below its 50 level on the weekly RSI. So until we can clear this topside resistance line on the weekly, personally I think that this is a market that we should still expect to be pulling back after a nice recovery of the lows here. Also, there's another way of looking at this, which is based on this break of 2015 lows. So we broke through that during this break here, and I think what the market is doing here is coming back. We've tested that line before here, failed. We've come back again. I think we're testing that same line. If we fail here, expect another pullback. Let's take a look at the Nifty, and here we are seeing that we are moving above the recent 2016 weekly closing high, and the level here is 7716.50. So that short-term breakout actually I think is good. So if the market can hold above that, we can assume that it could go on to build on higher. So that's good. But if you take a look at the recent weekly action, and this is a 1-year weekly for the Nifty again. So here was a close of the highs on a weekly chart for November, and the level there was 7942.70. So what we see here is the market has twice so far tried to move above that number and failed. There was rejection here in late December. Of course, we got this plunge, and here we look like we did try to stay above that, but closed the week below 7942. So I think the more this is confirmed as resistance, I think it might set up for a pullback. Also, you can take a look at this 1-year weekly chart. We can see that the market is really not moving higher. A simple line connecting RSI highs right there shows that we haven't moved above the top side on the weekly chart. In fact, I see more bearish setup here on the weekly if I take a look at the 3-year weekly. So if you take a look at a 3-year weekly, the one thing you can see here, if you take the if you take the weekly closing highs, so the weekly closing high there and this weekly closing high, that weekly closing high, draw a straight line, and you're gonna see that we closed exactly on that line, suggesting that if we cannot move above that RSI, the price trend line, if we can't move above the price trend line there, that we could easily conclude that the next swing trade for this market is down. Otherwise, bulls would like to see the market move above that resistance level. So bulls would like to see the market take off and move above that line. If you take a look at the RSI, you see lots of sell signals. In my opinion, you can see that take the highs here, draw a line like that, and this RSI highs correspond with the highs here and there. So we are coming back to test that line. So that's another layer of resistance. We can also see that if you take the previous break line here, so there was a break here, extend that line, should be something like that. You can see that ever since we moved above or back, let's call it back below that line there, the market has been off the highs there. We moved back below the line there for another sell signal, resistance on the line here for the highs of October, November, and now we are back to test that line. I think around here, if we can't move above that line, then obviously we are setting up for a pullback. And the reason why is, if you take a look at the daily has made a nice move here above recent daily highs. That's encouraging. The only problem is I don't think that is a strong breakout, because net the RSI really did not make any improvement, and I think this RSI not making a fresh high of any significance could be looked upon as being negative divergence, or also you can draw it a different way. Just draw it connecting RSI highs, something like that. You can see that this is the line where most of the highs have come on this resistance line. So I think here the best way to look at this is to insist, if you want to see the market move higher, you might want to insist that the market moves above 7914.75. So you want to see a breakout above the recent daily closing high from last week. So the market does need to clear that line if it is truly on an upswing. So we need a breakout above that. Otherwise, based on the weeklies, I think we might see a pullback. And the reason why I say that is, if I look across the globe, for example, take a look at the South African market on a weekly chart, we see signs of stalling. Couple of observations here. This was the highs of 2015, or at least in the summer. If we draw a line from there, which would be a breakout, something like that, you can see that we've been rejected once before here. Actually, a couple weeks that we tried to move above that line there and stalled, 3 weeks there. Finally, we had a major drop, and here we did try and move above that line for 1 week, but the subsequent week we were smacked back down. Same situation here. So all that failure does indicate to me that more than likely this is setting up now for a move lower, especially given the fact that we've had a very nice move off the lows here. Very strong move, but now that move seems to be in question. Also, if you take a look at the RSI, you can see that the RSI had broken down here May of 2015 off the highs there. We haven't been back to those levels. If you draw a line from there, it does tell you where this market has been stalling. We hit that line for the highs there, and over the last couple of weeks, as you can see, we seem to have formed a nice double top. As long as the market is showing resistance on that line, one has to assume that potentially here the next swing trade for this market looks to be pointing to a market that wants to pull back. If we take a look at some European markets, we can see lots of resistance levels here. Take a look at the FTSE, take the RSI highs line, and it's a simple line connecting RSI highs on the daily. You can see for now we've come back, we hit that line, and we seem to be stalling, so that's a short-term sell signal. Also, the same level happens to be where it has stalled before. If you take a look at the most recent break, took place somewhere around there, and so let's change colors there. So the recent break to the break there, we can draw a line from there, which also happens to be right now the market confirming resistance on that line. So net looks like here, as far as the French market is concerned, we see another sell signal on the daily. Also happens to be an area around the 200-day moving average. So clearly, if the market is to move higher, it does need to go past that resistance, either in terms of moving above the 200-day moving average, and also needs to be above those two lines if the market is to see higher prices. Otherwise, it looks like resistance and a pullback, in my opinion. If you take a look at the German market, couple of observations here. Take the daily close, the weekly closing high, and that weekly closing high, you can see that we are still below that trend line. So the weekly has a lot of challenges there. Also, we are coming back to test the recent break point of the highs. So this trend line break somewhere there in May of 2015 has brought the market off the highs. We haven't been back there. We can draw a line from there. It should be something like that. So the market did move back to test the red line. The last time we hit that red line with uniform action was during this high, and now we are back here, suggesting that if we cannot move above the red line, then the next meaningful swing trade is for lower prices. Now this seems to be consistent with the FTSE. As you can see, the FTSE also coming back to test the break of May 2015, which brought the market off the highs. And so we draw a line from there, and pretty much what is happening here is we are coming back to test that break line, and clearly we are stalling. As long as we are stalling, one can continue to expect a pullback. So this is a 2-year weekly. If we take a look at the 3-year weekly, we can see that there's going to be another line of resistance. So let me draw that. And so right here, connecting the RSI highs. So again, coming back to test that line. Clearly, if the market cannot move above that, then we have to assume that that resistance is consistent with the other resistance we had seen based on the break from this trend line break here we drew previously. So that is also a problem. So we got 2 lines showing resistance. So until we can clear the recent weekly closing high, so I guess the best way to look at this is, if you want to see the market moving higher, you might want to insist that the market move above the recent weekly closing high. And the level to watch there for a move higher is if the market can move above 63.43.75, which is the weekly closing high from a week ago. Anything above that, and maybe the market would have cleared the resistance levels we are discussing here. Otherwise, net, I still lean to a market that wants to pull back. If we take a look at the Canadian market, we can see that ever since it moved above the trend line resistance, so this resistance here, ever since it moved above this line, we can see that the market has had a nice run, which corresponds with the movement in the dollar. I bet the gold trade. Ever since gold started moving higher, the Canadian market has followed. And so now here we see a nice breakout over the last couple of weeks, holding above 13,522. So that breakout does give it the opportunity here to see higher prices. But this, and also the potential here for the 13-week moving average to cross above the 34-week moving average and continue moving higher. So that's a positive argument for the market to move higher, and that is valid. But if I was to be consistent as I look across all the charts that I'm looking at in this video, we can see a couple of challenges. Number one is the RSI, because even as the price has advanced, we can see that it is coming back to test the break. This RSI break right there corresponds with the movement of the highs of 2015. If we draw a line from there, you can see that this is exactly where we're ending the week. So if we have a reversal based on resistance on the red line, then that would actually indicate that the potential is now for markets to pull back after a very nice run of recent lows. So I would speculate that around here, especially if we see resistance on a weekly chart, that would suggest that the next swing trade of any meaningful size is going to be to the downside. And I also think if you take a look at the highs on a weekly basis, this high here for late October 2015, the market was coming back to test the weekly closing high there. As of right now, we can see that it has failed to reclaim above that level. So I think the resistance in the price there and the RSI resistance right there, if you take those two together, net, I personally lean to the market now pointing down, based also on the fact that the other market that is heavily dependent on commodities is the Brazilian market. If you take a look at the Brazilian market on the daily, we can see that on the daily here we had improvement in price over the last couple of weeks. But while that was taking place, the RSI has been making lower and lower lows. And I think given that it is down on Friday, it confirms resistance on that negative divergence line, suggesting that the next swing trade could easily be to the downside. In fact, if you take a look at the EWZ, the ETF that tracks the Brazilian market here in the US, and go back about 3 years, so 3 years of a weekly chart here, you can see that it is running into some type of a resistance. So we can see that the break took place during this break here recently, that RSI break off the highs here of 2014. We draw a line from there, and as of right now, in my opinion, it looks like we are forming what could be called a double top. Because of this weekly resistance with a double top on that red line, net, personally, I'm starting to think that after such a nice move off the lows here, the next swing trade for the Brazilian market and the Canadian market, and in fact for many markets across the globe, it seems net, my conclusion is that now we are looking at the possibility of markets pulling back. Eric Mwadid, Mwadid.com. Be on the lookout for my US market analysis. Otherwise, enjoy your weekend. Good luck, peace, and blessings. ESS. Woo! Yeah!